I never expected the words that shattered my heart and turned my world upside down. "We can't make room for you at Thanksgiving." Betrayal coursed through my veins like ice, leaving me breathless as the warmth of my kitchen faded into a distant memory. This was supposed to be a day of gratitude and family, not exclusion and despair. I had always believed that love would hold us together, but in that moment, I felt the walls closing in. No longer willing to accept being sidelined, I made a bold offer that would leave them regretting their choice, an invitation for them to see just how much I mattered. Make sure you watch till the very end, and comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story travels. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more unbelievable true stories. I had spent the entire morning in the kitchen, the familiar scent of roasting turkey and cinnamon filling the air, wrapping around me like a warm, worn blanket. Thanksgiving was always my sanctuary, a day I cherished above all others. For years, I had poured my heart into these gatherings, the laughter of my grandchildren echoing through the halls, the clatter of silverware on plates, and the soft murmur of family stories shared over steaming mugs of cider. It was a tradition I guarded fiercely, a promise I made to myself and to my daughter Emma, that no matter what storms life threw at us, we would always come together for this day. As I arranged the final touches on the dining table, smoothing the crisp white linen and placing the hand-painted pumpkin at the center, my phone buzzed on the counter. I wiped my hands on my apron, expecting a cheerful message from Emma or one of the kids, maybe a quick note about their arrival time or a last-minute request. Instead, the screen lit up with a single text from Emma: "We can't make room for you at Thanksgiving." I stared at the message, disbelief washing over me like a cold wave. My fingers trembled as I reread the words, searching for some hidden meaning, a cruel joke, anything but the brutal truth. How could she say that? How could my own daughter, the little girl I had cradled in my arms, the one I had stayed up nights worrying about, suddenly tell me I wasn't welcome in her home on the day that meant everything to me? The kitchen, once filled with warmth and savory aromas, suddenly felt like an empty room, cold and silent. I sank into the nearest chair, my breath catching in my throat. Memories swirled unbidden: Emma's first Thanksgiving at our house, her shy smile as she helped me peel apples for the pie, the way she held her babies close as they toddled around the living room. I had given everything to build these moments, to create a family bond that could withstand time and distance. And now, with one short sentence, it all felt shattered. I reached for the phone, my thumb hesitating over the call button. I needed to hear her voice, to understand if this was some terrible mistake. The line rang once, twice, and then Emma answered, her voice clipped and distant. "Mom," she said, "I'm sorry, but it's just not possible this year." Her words were like shards of glass, sharp and unyielding. There was no warmth, no hesitation, no trace of the daughter I remembered. I wanted to scream, to beg for an explanation, but all that came out was a quiet, "Why?" Emma didn't answer. Instead, she said only that Mark had been working on the guest list and that the house was too small, that the kids had their own plans, and that it was better this way. I felt a crushing weight settle over my chest, a mix of confusion and rejection that left me numb. I ended the call and sat back, my mind racing. Was it really Mark's decision? Had my son-in-law persuaded Emma to exclude me? I remembered the subtle changes over the past year, the way Emma's laughter had seemed more forced during visits, the way Mark's presence had grown more dominant in family decisions, the way I had been gently pushed aside. But I had always excused it, telling myself that families have their ups and downs, that love could bridge any gap. Now, I wasn't so sure. I reached out to Susan, my oldest and dearest friend, the one who had stood by me through every heartbreak and joy. When she answered, her voice was warm and steady, a lifeline in the storm. I told her everything, my voice breaking as I read Emma's cold message aloud. "There's no excuse for this," Susan said firmly. "You deserve better than to be cast aside like some inconvenient guest. You have to stand up for yourself, Laura. Don't let them push you out quietly." Her words gave me a flicker of strength. I had spent so long trying to keep the peace, smoothing over tensions, sacrificing my own feelings for the sake of family harmony. But maybe it was time to stop being the quiet one, the one who always gave in. I spent the afternoon replaying the conversation in my head, searching for clues, for something, anything, that would explain why Emma had turned away from me. I thought of the times I had helped with the grandchildren, the way I had kept the old family traditions alive, even when it was difficult. I remembered the countless phone calls, the visits, the meals prepared, the tears wiped away. Was it not enough? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the kitchen, I sat in silence, the weight of loneliness settling heavily around me. I realized that this Thanksgiving would be different, not the joyful reunion I had anticipated, but a painful lesson in loss and resilience. But beneath the hurt, a small ember of resolve began to glow. I would not disappear quietly. I would find a way to reclaim my place, to remind Emma and everyone else that family is not just about proximity or convenience, it's about love, respect, and belonging. I looked around the room, the table set for a celebration that might never happen, and I whispered to myself, I'm still here. I'm still part of this family. And for the first time since reading that message, I believed it. I stared at the phone, my finger hovering over Emma's name. I wanted to call her again, to beg for some kind of explanation, but the memory of her cold, clipped voice stopped me. Instead, I pressed the call button and let it ring, over and over, until it went to voicemail. No message came back. I left a trembling voice, careful to keep the hurt out, asking if we could talk, really talk, and then I waited. Silence. Susan's voice was the lifeline that pulled me from that silence. When she arrived at my door that afternoon, her eyes immediately searched my face. She didn't need words to know something was wrong. I handed her my phone, and she read the message. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her brow furrowed. This isn't a mistake, Laura, she said quietly. They're making a choice to exclude you. Her words landed like a weight, confirming what I feared but hadn't dared fully admit. It wasn't about space or schedules. It was deliberate. I told her about the call, how Emma's tone had been distant, dismissive even. Susan shook her head. That's not your daughter. That's someone else, someone who's been influenced, maybe even manipulated. I wanted to protest, to say that Emma would never let anyone come between us. But deep down, a seed of doubt had already taken root. I thought about Mark, Emma's husband, and the subtle shifts I'd noticed over the past months, the way decisions were suddenly filtered through him, the way family gatherings felt less warm, more controlled. Susan sat beside me, her hand on mine. You need to find out what's really going on. Don't let them push you out without a fight. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. But the thought of digging deeper, of confronting not just Emma but the entire family, frightened me. I had always been the one to keep the peace, to smooth over conflicts and keep the family together. What if this time, I was the one breaking it apart? That night, I lay awake, turning over every conversation, every visit, trying to find where the cracks had formed. I recalled the last family dinner, the way Emma had exchanged quick, knowing glances with Mark, the way my questions about future plans had been politely dodged. I remembered the subtle exclusion from group texts, the cancellations of visits with vague excuses. It was like watching a slow fade, a gradual erasure of my place in their lives. I reached out to my son, David, hoping for some insight. He answered quickly, his voice warm but cautious. Mom, I've noticed some tension too, he admitted. Mark's been pushing for more control over decisions, and honestly, Emma's been under a lot of pressure. Pressure. The word echoed in my mind. I had always believed that love would protect us from outside influence, but perhaps I had been naive. Maybe Emma was caught between loyalty to her husband and loyalty to me. Maybe she was afraid of what standing up for me might cost her. Susan suggested I speak to other family members, to see if they had noticed the shifts, to gather pieces of the puzzle. I hesitated. What if I was making mountains out of molehills? What if I was reading too much into things? But the ache of exclusion was too sharp to ignore. Over the next days, I called aunts, cousins, even old friends who had watched our family grow. Some were sympathetic, others hesitant to get involved. But a few shared whispers about Mark's influence, about Emma's changing priorities, about a rift that was widening beneath the surface. One voice, my niece Claire, was particularly candid. Aunt Laura, she said softly, I think Emma feels torn. Mark wants to keep things tight, just their immediate family, and Emma's afraid of losing him if she pushes back. But it hurts me too, seeing you left out. Her words struck me deeply. I realized this wasn't just about me being excluded, it was about the family fracturing in ways I hadn't wanted to see. But knowing this also sparked a determination in me. If Emma was caught in the middle, maybe I could find a way to reach her, to remind her of the love that had always bound us. Susan and I sat late into the night, planning my next steps. She urged me to confront the situation head-on, to speak openly with Emma and Mark, not with anger but with honesty. They need to hear how this hurts you, she said. And you need to hear their side too. I knew she was right, but the thought of facing them both made my stomach twist. What if they refused to listen? What if the family I had spent a lifetime nurturing was slipping away? Still, I couldn't stay silent. I owed it to myself, to Emma, and to the grandchildren who deserved to see their grandmother standing strong. The next morning, I called Emma again. This time, when she answered, I spoke calmly, trying to bridge the growing distance. Emma, I want to understand. Can we talk about what's going on? I miss you, all of you. I want us to be a family. Her voice softened slightly, a flicker of the daughter I knew breaking through the armor. Mom, it's complicated, she said. Mark and I are trying to figure things out. It's not about you, not really. It's just different now. Different how? I asked, clinging to the hope that this was not the end but a painful pause. Emma hesitated. Mark wants to keep things small, to focus on our little family. I guess I got caught up in that. But I'm sorry if it hurt you. Her words were fragile, uncertain. I felt a mix of relief and sadness. The wedge was there, but maybe it wasn't permanent. I don't want to be on the outside, I said softly. I want to be part of your lives, even if things change. But I need you to know how much I love you and how much it hurts to be pushed away. There was silence on the line, then a whisper. I love you too, Mom. I'm sorry. Let's keep talking. As I hung up, a cautious hope stirred within me. The path ahead would not be easy, and the wounds might take time to heal. But for the first time since that cruel message, I felt a flicker of light, an invitation to fight for the family I treasured, to refuse to be forgotten or cast aside. Susan's words echoed in my mind, stand up for yourself, Laura. Don't accept this quietly. And I knew I wouldn't. Not now. Not ever. The days that followed felt like walking through a fog, each step uncertain but necessary. I began reaching out to other family members, cautiously at first, testing the waters to see if they had noticed the same shift in Emma and Mark's behavior. Some avoided the topic, offering polite but evasive responses, while others hinted at tensions I hadn't been fully aware of. It was painful to uncover the undercurrents of resentment and misunderstanding, but I needed to know the truth. One afternoon, I called my sister, Linda. Her voice was warm, but even she hesitated before speaking. Laura, I'm sorry you're going through this. I've seen how Mark's influence has changed things. Emma seems to be caught between wanting to keep peace with him and maintaining her relationship with you. It's a tough spot. Linda's words were both a comfort and a sting. I had always believed that family bonds were unbreakable, but now I saw how fragile they could be when mixed with differing loyalties and fears. I thought of Emma's quiet silences during our calls, the vague excuses for missed visits. It was as if a wall was rising between us, brick by brick. I found myself reflecting on the sacrifices I had made over the years, countless meals cooked, birthdays celebrated, crises weathered alongside Emma and her children. I had been the one who showed up, who held the family together when things threatened to unravel. And yet, here I was, being pushed aside as if my presence was a burden rather than a blessing. Susan's voice was a steady anchor during those moments of doubt. You've done everything a mother could do, Laura. Now, it's time to make them see your worth, not through pleading, but by standing tall. Her words ignited a resolve within me. I couldn't remain silent or passive any longer. If Emma and Mark were determined to exclude me, then I would find another way to remind them, and the rest of the family, that I was still here, still part of this story. With Susan's encouragement, I began to draft a letter to Emma. It wasn't easy to put my feelings into words without sounding accusatory or bitter. I wanted to be honest but gentle, firm but loving. I wrote about the years of shared memories, the traditions we had built, and the pain of feeling shut out. I expressed a desire not to fight but to heal, to find a way forward that included everyone. But I also made a bold proposal. I would host Thanksgiving at my house this year and invite the entire extended family, including friends and relatives that Emma and Mark had alienated over the years. I wanted to create a space where everyone felt welcome, where old wounds could begin to mend. Sending that letter was an act of courage and defiance. It was a challenge wrapped in an invitation, a way to reclaim my place without demanding it. I wasn't just waiting for Emma to come around, I was taking the first step toward rebuilding what had been broken. The days after I sent the letter were filled with a tense anticipation. I spoke with Susan often, sharing updates and fears. I reached out to a few relatives, quietly inviting them to join the Thanksgiving gathering, careful not to frame it as a rebellion but as a celebration of family. I noticed a shift in how some family members responded. There was curiosity, even support, mixed with hesitation. Some were relieved to have a chance to reconnect with me outside of the strained dynamic at Emma's house. Others were wary, unsure of how Emma and Mark would react. As Thanksgiving approached, I found myself both anxious and hopeful. The house buzzed with preparations, pots simmering on the stove, fresh flowers arranged in vases, the table set with my grandmother's china. It was not just a meal, it was a statement, a declaration that family means more than exclusions and cold messages. One afternoon, Susan and I sat in the living room, sipping tea and watching the golden light filter through the curtains. "You're doing something remarkable, Laura," she said. "You're turning pain into strength." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle in my chest. It wasn't just about Thanksgiving anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, asserting my value, and refusing to be erased. Then came the unexpected. Emma called. Her voice was tentative, layered with surprise and something softer beneath. "Mom, I got your letter." I wasn't expecting all of this. I could hear the hesitation, the conflict she was wrestling with. "I want us to be a family, Emma. Not just on Thanksgiving, but every day. I'm hoping this can be a new beginning." She sighed. "It's complicated with Mark. But maybe we need to talk more. I don't want to lose you." Her words were fragile but real. I felt a flicker of hope, a possibility that the invitation would open doors rather than close them. In the days that followed, word spread about the Thanksgiving invitation. Messages came in from relatives and friends, some expressing excitement, others cautious optimism. The energy was shifting, the family circle beginning to widen again. Yet, beneath the surface, I knew the true challenge lay ahead, with Emma and Mark. I was preparing myself to face that, to hold my ground while keeping my heart open. As I folded the last napkin and placed it beside a polished fork, I whispered to myself, "This is for us, for all the family we can still be." The house was ready, the invitation sent, the stage set. Now, I waited, not passively, but with a quiet strength, ready to meet whatever came next. The morning I sent the letter, my hands trembled as I pressed send, the weight of what I'd just done settling over me like a quiet storm. It wasn't merely an invitation, it was a challenge, a statement I hoped would ripple through the family and force a reckoning. I couldn't predict how Emma and Mark would respond, but I knew I had to stand firm, to reclaim the space I'd been so abruptly denied. Days later, the first responses trickled in. My phone buzzed with messages from relatives and old friends who had been silently watching the family's fractures from afar. Some expressed surprise, others relief, and a few offered tentative support. They remembered the warmth of past gatherings, the laughter and love we'd shared, and they seemed eager to be part of something that might heal old wounds. Susan was my constant companion through it all, her presence steady and encouraging. You've stirred the pot, Laura, she said with a knowing smile. Now watch it boil. The invitation became a quiet talk of the town within our circle, whispers passing from cousin to aunt, from neighbor to friend. It was as if the family's unspoken tensions were suddenly illuminated, forcing everyone to confront what had been simmering beneath the surface. Then, the unexpected happened. Emma called. Her voice was hesitant, layered with a mixture of surprise, guilt, and something softer, almost vulnerable. "Mom, I got your letter," she said, the words trembling on the line. I wasn't expecting all of this. Her admission was a crack in the armor she'd built around herself. I could hear the conflict in her voice, the tug between loyalty to Mark and the love she still held for me. "Emma," I replied gently, "this isn't about blame or anger. It's about family. I want us to be together, not just for Thanksgiving, but always. This is my way of reaching out." There was a pause, and then she sighed, a sound heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. "It's complicated with Mark. He wants things to stay small, just the four of us. But maybe we need to talk more. I don't want to lose you." Her words, fragile but real, stirred a cautious hope within me. It was the first step toward mending a rift that threatened to tear us apart. I told her I was ready whenever she was, that my door would always be open. As the days passed, word spread of the Thanksgiving invitation, and the family's reaction began to ripple through the community. Some were curious, others supportive, and a few wary of the challenge it posed to the status quo. But beneath it all, there was a growing sense that something had shifted, that the family was being called back together. The morning of Thanksgiving arrived with a crisp chill in the air, the sky a clear blue stretching endlessly overhead. I moved through the house, the familiar sounds and smells wrapping around me like an old friend. The table was set meticulously, each place marked with care, the centerpiece glowing softly in the afternoon light. As guests began to arrive, the atmosphere swelled with tentative warmth. Faces I hadn't seen in months, even years, appeared at the door, smiles cautious but genuine. Stories and laughter began to fill the rooms, weaving threads of connection that had frayed but not broken. Among the crowd were friends Emma had grown distant from, their presence a quiet testament to the bridges I was determined to rebuild. I watched as old bonds rekindled, as memories were shared and new ones made. Then, unexpectedly, Emma and Mark arrived. Their expressions were guarded, a mix of surprise and uncertainty flickering between them. They stood at the threshold for a moment, taking in the scene, family gathered, warmth radiating, a table full of food and open hearts. Emma's eyes met mine, and in that look, I saw a flicker of recognition, a silent admission of the pain and pride that had kept us apart. Mark's posture was tense, but he said nothing, watching as the family embraced and settled into the celebration. I approached them slowly, extending my hand and then pulling Emma into a gentle hug. "Welcome," I whispered, my voice steady despite the whirlwind inside me. "This is your home, too." The rest of the evening unfolded with a fragile grace. Conversations began cautiously but grew more heartfelt as the hours passed. Emma and Mark engaged with relatives they hadn't spoken to in years, the walls between them slowly dissolving. I noticed moments when Emma's gaze softened, when she laughed freely, when she reached out to her children with renewed affection. It was as if the act of coming here, of accepting the invitation, opened a door to healing. Yet beneath the surface, I knew the journey was far from over. The invitation had forced a confrontation, not just with Emma and Mark, but with the family's unspoken grievances and fears. It was a beginning, not an end. As the night wound down, and the last guests said their goodbyes, I felt a quiet exhaustion mingled with a profound sense of accomplishment. I had taken a stand, not with anger or bitterness, but with love and determination. I had reminded my family, and myself, that exclusion is not a fate to accept quietly. Walking to the door to see Emma and Mark off, I saw in their eyes a new respect, a tentative acknowledgement of the cost of division and the hope for reconciliation. When the door closed behind them, I stood for a moment in the stillness, the echoes of laughter lingering like a promise. The house was quiet again, but inside me, something had shifted. I whispered to myself, "This is just the beginning." The morning after Thanksgiving, the house felt strangely quiet. The remnants of the celebration lingered, empty chairs, half-full plates, and the faint scent of roasted turkey mingled with the crisp autumn air drifting through the open windows. I sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee, my mind swirling with the events of the previous day. The gathering had been a balm to my aching heart, a room filled with laughter, stories, and the warmth of familiar faces. It was a stark contrast to the cold silence that had haunted me just weeks before, when Emma's message had shattered my expectations. Yet, despite the joy, a subtle tension lingered beneath the surface, a reminder that healing is rarely instantaneous. Word of the Thanksgiving invitation had spread through the family like wildfire. I could sense the ripple effect it created. Some relatives reached out with newfound openness, while others held back, uncertain how to navigate the shifting dynamics. The invitation had stirred dormant feelings, exposed unspoken grievances, and prompted quiet reflection. Emma called that morning, her voice tentative, carrying the weight of unspoken emotions. "Mom," she began, "I wanted to thank you for yesterday. It was different. Good different, but it made me realize how much we've lost." Her words struck a chord deep within me. I could hear the regret, the vulnerability beneath her guarded tone. "I'm glad you came," I replied softly. "It was important for all of us to be together again." She hesitated, then admitted, "I've been feeling torn, caught between what Mark wants and what I want. It's been hard." I understood. The invisible tug-of-war between loyalty and love, between old ties and new realities, was something I had witnessed for months. "Emma," I said gently, "family isn't about choosing sides. It's about finding a way to include everyone, even when it's difficult." Our conversation lingered, a tentative bridge stretching across the distance that had grown between us. It was not a resolution, but a beginning, a fragile acknowledgement that wounds needed tending. As the day unfolded, I noticed subtle shifts among family members. Text messages arrived, filled with warmth and tentative plans for future gatherings. Some expressed gratitude for the opportunity to reconnect, while others confessed their own feelings of hurt and isolation. It was clear that the invitation had stirred more than just a holiday meal, it had sparked conversations that many had avoided. Susan stopped by in the afternoon, her eyes bright with encouragement. "Laura, you've opened a door that many thought was closed forever. It's going to take time, but you're leading the way." Her words bolstered my resolve. I realized that this journey was not mine alone, it was shared by everyone who longed for family unity but had been caught in the crossfire of misunderstandings and fear. Yet, beneath the hopeful surface, I could not ignore the undercurrents of resistance. Emma's husband, Mark, remained distant in his communications, his silence a stark contrast to the fragile connections forming elsewhere. I sensed that his influence still weighed heavily on the family's decisions, a barrier that would not be easily dismantled. I found myself reflecting on the delicate balance between standing firm and extending grace. I wanted to protect my place in the family, but I also wanted to nurture the relationships that mattered most. It was a tightrope walk between assertion and empathy. Late that evening, I penned a message to Emma, expressing my hope that we could continue to rebuild what was broken, not just for the sake of tradition but for the future. I urged her to let me in, to share her fears and hopes, so we could face them together. Her reply came hours later, brief but sincere, "Thank you, Mom. I want that too." The days that followed were a mix of small gestures and cautious steps. Phone calls grew longer, visits more frequent, and the walls between us seemed to soften, if only slightly. I sensed that Emma was beginning to reclaim her place within the family, not as a hostage to circumstance, but as a woman navigating her own path. Meanwhile, I continued to reach out to other relatives, building bridges where I could. Some responded with warmth, others with hesitation, but the dialogue was opening. I realized that family is not a static entity, it is a living, breathing web of connections that requires constant care. Susan and I talked often, strategizing how to maintain this fragile momentum. She reminded me that healing is not linear and that setbacks were inevitable. But she also believed in the power of persistence and love. One afternoon, as I watched the golden leaves fall outside the window, I felt a quiet strength settle within me. I had faced exclusion, heartbreak, and uncertainty, but I had also found resilience and hope. The family I had cherished was evolving, and I was determined to be part of its future. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the house, I whispered to myself, "This is only the beginning. We still have a long way to go, but we're moving forward." And with that, I embraced the uncertainty, ready to navigate whatever came next with an open heart and unwavering resolve. Thanksgiving morning dawned crisp and clear, sunlight streaming through the windows as I prepared the last of the dishes. The house, once heavy with uncertainty, now felt alive with possibility. I moved through the kitchen with a quiet grace, the familiar rhythms of chopping and stirring grounding me amid the swirling emotions. The phone rang just as I was setting the cranberry sauce on the table. It was Emma. Her voice was soft, tentative, but there was a warmth I hadn't heard in months. "Mom," she said, "Mark and I wanted to come early, help out, maybe talk." My heart caught in my throat. After all the distance, all the walls that had been built, this felt like a door opening, narrow, perhaps, but real. When Emma and Mark arrived, the tension was palpable but tempered by the shared history and the unspoken hope that this day could be different. Emma's smile was tentative but genuine, and I saw in her eyes the daughter I remembered, the one who once clung to me after a bad dream, the one who had laughed and cried within these walls. Mark's presence was more guarded. He was polite, even kind, but I sensed the weight of unresolved issues pressing down on him. Still, he rolled up his sleeves and joined in, helping set the table and carrying in dishes. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. As family members trickled in, the house filled with the sounds of reunion, children's laughter, the clink of glasses, the murmur of conversation. The air was thick with the aroma of roasted turkey, cinnamon, and fresh bread, but beneath it was something more profound, the tentative weaving of bonds once frayed. During the meal, conversations were careful but honest. Emma shared stories of her children's recent adventures, her voice light but tinged with the weight of recent struggles. Mark spoke sparingly, choosing his words with care, but I saw glimpses of the man I hoped he could become, a partner not just to Emma, but to the family. At one point, Emma reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you, Mom," she said softly. "For this. For not giving up on us." The words struck me deeply. It was a moment of grace, a bridge spanning the chasm that had grown between us. I squeezed her hand, feeling the warmth of forgiveness and the fragile hope of reconciliation. Later, as the evening wore on and the house quieted, Emma and Mark lingered. We spoke openly about the past, the misunderstandings, the fears, the choices that had driven us apart. It was not easy, and there were tears and silences, but there was also a shared commitment to move forward. I set clear boundaries, expressing that while forgiveness was possible, respect and inclusion were non-negotiable. Emma nodded, understanding the weight of those words. "I want us to rebuild," she said. "But it has to be real." Mark, too, agreed. "I don't want to be the cause of division," he admitted. "I'm willing to try." As they left that night, the house felt different, lighter, somehow. The path ahead was uncertain, and the wounds still raw, but for the first time in a long time, there was a sense of possibility. In the days that followed, I reflected on the journey from exclusion to this fragile reunion. The pain of being cast aside had been sharp, the loneliness profound. But through courage, honesty, and a refusal to be invisible, I had reclaimed my place. I realized that family is not just about shared blood or tradition, it's about respect, love, and the willingness to confront hard truths together. I embraced the new Thanksgiving tradition we had begun, one not defined by exclusion but by strength and genuine connection. As I closed the curtains one evening, I whispered to myself, "We are here. We are family. And this time, it's different." The house was quiet now, the echoes of laughter and conversation from Thanksgiving Day fading into memory. I sat alone in the living room, the soft hum of the heater the only sound accompanying my thoughts. The journey from that painful message, "We can't make room for you at Thanksgiving," to this moment had been long and winding. I traced the path in my mind, each step a mixture of heartbreak, resilience, and hard-won clarity. I remembered the shock that had struck me the day I first read Emma's text. The disbelief when her voice answered my call with cold distance, the ache of exclusion from a family I had nurtured for years. For a while, I had let the silence swallow me, excusing their actions, hoping things would mend on their own. But silence, I learned, can be a prison. It was Susan's steady presence that helped me find my voice. Her words urged me to stand up, to confront the hurt rather than hide it. I began to see the fractures more clearly, the influence Mark held, the fears Emma wrestled with, the complexities that had grown between us all. Reaching out to other family members revealed that I was not alone in feeling the sting of exclusion. Their shared stories painted a picture of a family caught in old wounds and new divisions. Yet, those conversations also gave me strength, reminding me that love and connection could still be reclaimed. Sending that letter inviting the entire family to Thanksgiving was a turning point. It was a bold act, one born of both pain and hope. The invitation challenged Emma and Mark, and it challenged the family to remember what mattered most. I wasn't just asking for a seat at the table, I was demanding to be seen, to be valued. The day itself was a testament to that demand. The house, once heavy with silence and exclusion, filled with laughter, shared stories, and the messy, beautiful chaos of family. Emma and Mark's arrival, tentative and uncertain, marked the beginning of a fragile reconciliation. The conversations that followed were honest and sometimes painful, but they were necessary. I held firm to my boundaries, making it clear that respect and inclusion were not negotiable. It was a lesson I had to teach them, and myself. Forgiveness, I realized, does not mean erasing the past, but acknowledging it and choosing to move forward with open eyes. In the weeks since, that Thanksgiving has become a new tradition, not one of forced smiles or hollow rituals, but one of genuine connection and strength. Emma and I have begun to rebuild our relationship, brick by brick, with honesty and love as our mortar. Mark, too, has taken tentative steps toward becoming part of the family rather than a wedge dividing it. I've learned that family is not a static portrait but a living tapestry, woven with threads of joy and pain, love and conflict. It requires courage to face the fractures and patience to mend them. I have embraced that challenge, choosing to be visible, to speak my truth, and to demand the respect I deserve. As I sit here now, the quiet wrapping around me like a soft blanket, I feel a peace I hadn't thought possible. The hurt still lingers, a shadow reminding me of the journey, but it no longer defines me. I am no longer the invisible woman waiting for permission to belong. I whisper to myself, quiet doesn't mean weak. And for the first time, I truly believe it. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.